All right, welcome to part 2 of lesson 5-1. This time we're going to be working with word problems. Here we have a word problem or a real world situation, and it tells us that a sales associate is giving a $500 hiring bonus with a new job. She earns an average commission of $250 per week for the next 12 weeks. How much does she earn? Well, the first thing we want to do is we need to write an equation in the form of y equals mx plus b, which is the slope-intercept form. So first we got to figure out the slope. Now those of you that had me, you have to remember that the slope is going to be the unit rate. And in this case, the unit rate is $250 per week. So the unit rate is $250 per week, and so the slope is 250. Next thing we got to do is find the y-intercept, and the y-intercept, if you recall, is the initial value. In this case, how much does the associate start off with? Well, she gets a $500 hiring bonus, and so that's going to be the initial value of $500 when it comes to her earnings. Now we can substitute the slope and the y-intercept into the equation, and we end up with an equation of y equals 250x plus 500. The next thing we had to do is we got to figure out how much they make for the next 12 weeks. Well, in order to do that, we got to look at the unit rate. And the unit rate, if you recall, tells us the difference of the y's over the difference of the x's. Now, why is this important? Well, because the units that go with the y, which is your dependent variable, is going to be the dollars. And the unit that goes with the x, your independent variable, is the number of weeks. Now in this case, the y represents the number of dollars, and the x again represents the number of weeks. And so we're going to use that knowledge to figure out, okay, they're telling us in 12 weeks how much they make, and if you look, the weeks represent the x variable, which is our independent variable. And so we're going to substitute it into the equation. Here, I'm writing out how the dollars amount is going to equal $250 times the number of weeks plus the initial value of $500. And that's going to help us get the answer to how much she makes in 12 weeks. So we use the equation. The weeks go with the x variable. So we're going to substitute, instead of 250 times x, it's going to be 250 times 12 plus 500. And now we just solve for y. We multiply first. 250 times 12 ends up being 3,000. We bring down the positive 500, initial value, and so we end up with y equals 3,500. And so how much does she earn? She earns $3,500 when she works 12 weeks. Now let's look at the next problem from your homework. In this problem, a farm has 75 acres of wheat. The farmer can harvest the wheat from 12 acres per day. And how many days will all of the fields be harvested? So same thing, we got to write the equation in the form of y equals mx plus b. Our m is going to be the unit rate. And in this case, the unit rate is 12 acres per day. So if the unit rate is 12 acres per day, our slope is 12. And our initial value for on this problem, well, what do they start off with? So a lot of you guys are going to think, hey, they start off with 75 acres. But in reality, the initial value is 0. And so we have an equation that is y equals 12x, which is a proportional relationship in this case because there is no initial value. And so now we want to know how many days will all of the fields be harvested? Well, there are 75 acres total. So we go to our unit rate to figure out, okay, what is our acres, our independent or dependent variable? Because it's acres per day, the change in y goes with the acres, and the number of days goes with the x, which is our dependent variable, and we're going to use that to figure out that, hey, our y value is the acres, our X value is the number of days, so the number of acres that the farmer harvested is equal to 12 acres times the number of days. And so we use that to substitute the 75 acres of wheat that they originally tell us. The 75 is the acres, so that, like we checked earlier, is our dependent variable. So we substitute 75 for Y, not for X. X, if you remember, is the number of days due to our unit rate being 12 acres per day. Now we have an equation, 75 equals 12x, so we need to undo the multiplying by 12 by dividing both sides by 12. Remember, when you undo from one side, you undo to the other. 12 divided by 12 is 1, so we end up with x, specifically 1x on the right-hand side. And 75 divided by 12 ends up being 6 25/100ths. And so our number of acres is 6 25/100 because the x value represents the number of days. I'm sorry, the 6 25, it's not acres, it's days because the x value represents the days. So how long does it take? It takes 6 25/100 days, which is also the same as 6 1/4 days. In the next problem, a contractor's crew can frame 3 houses in a week. How long would it take them to frame 54 houses that they frame the same number each week? So once again, we got to write an equation, but you don't see the word per. Even though it's 3 houses in a week, you can think of it at 3 houses per week, and that'll help you come up with your unit rate. So we need to find the equation in the form of y equals mx plus b. So our slope, our unit rate is 3 houses per week, and so our slope is 3. Our y-intercept is our initial value. Well, what's our initial value? And in this case, our initial value is 0 because they don't start off with any houses. And so the equation is y equals 3x, which is a proportional relationship. Remember that the unit rate is the change in y over the change in x, which is also your slope. And so we know now that the y units are going to be the number of houses, and then the x unit is going to be the number of weeks. And so our equation, y equals 3x, will tell you how many houses is equal to 3 houses per week times the number of weeks. Now we want to know how long will it take them to frame 54 houses. So we use the original equation, and we're going to substitute 54 for y because it's 54 houses. Our houses is our y value, which is our dependent variable. And because they're asking how long, well, that's going to be in weeks, which is x, our independent variable. So we have an equation 54 equals 3x. Now we need to solve for x. We need to undo multiplying by 3. And how do you undo multiplying by 3? You're going to divide both sides by 3, both sides of your equation. So 3x divided by 3 is x, and 54 divided by 3 is 18. And because that is equal to x, the unit that goes with the x, our independent variable, is weeks. So the correct answer is 18 weeks. It takes 18 weeks for them to frame 54 houses. Last but not least, another problem I'm going to do for you. It tells you that a water tank holds 18,000 gallons. How long will it take for the water level to reach 6,000 gallons if the water is used at an average rate of 540 gallons per day? 450 gallons per day is our unit rate. Since our unit rate is 450 gallons per day, our slope is going to equal 450. Our initial value B before I do the B, you got to remember that because we are using 450 gallons of water, our slope is not going to be positive. It's going to be negative 450. And so luckily I caught myself. Make sure you guys catch yourselves when you guys find yourselves in that situation. Our initial value. In this case, how much water did we initially start with, or originally start with? And that's going to be 18,000 gallons. Not the 6,000 gallons, but we started with 18,000 gallons. So that's going to be our y-intercept b, which is our initial value. So the equation in the form of y equals mx plus b, we substitute 450 for our, negative 450 for our slope, and our y-intercept we substitute 18,000. The next thing we got to do is we got to rewrite it. Now you don't have to rewrite it, but if it makes it easier for you, the two equations that I have written here are equal. You can use either. Now let's figure out which is our independent, our dependent variable. So gallons go with our y values, days go with our x values, and our days are our independent variables, and our gallons are our dependent variables. Now because they are asking for how long, we want to solve for x, and they give us 6,000 gallons, so they're giving us y. So that's going to help us when we write the equation, y equals 18,000 minus 450x, and then we're going to substitute 6,000 gallons for y, because again our gallons are our dependent variable, and it goes with our unit rates, which goes with the difference of the y's over the difference of the x's. So now we substitute, and now we got to solve for x. This one's a little bit more complicated because we need to undo. Remember AMC. A stands for undo, subtraction, or addition of a constant term. And here our constant term is 18,000. So how do we undo 18,000? Adding 18,000, we subtract 18,000 from both sides. 18,000 minus 18,000 is 0. They cancel out. So we end up with negative 450x. 6,000 minus 18,000, they're at war. Who wins the war? The negatives. And by how many? 12,000. Now we go to M. M means undo, multiplying, and dividing of a variable term. Our variable term is negative 450x. That means you are multiplying x by negative 450. How do you undo multiplying by negative 450? You divide both sides. And what are we going to divide by? Negative 450, the exact same value you're multiplying by. Now, negative 450x divided by negative 450 is x. Negative 1200 divided by negative 450 is going to be positive, and you end up with 26.666666, and it repeats. Now, usually we don't write it like that. If we was a decimal, we would, a terminating decimal, we write it, but in this case, because it's 0.66666, we write it as 26 2/3. So x equals 26 2/3. Now, x values, we have to go back and remember what unit goes with our x values. That's going to be days, because of our unit rate is 450 gallons per day. And so we end up with an answer of 26 2/3 day. Any questions from y'all? Please come and see me. I hope this video helped you guys. Let me know if you guys find this helpful. Have a good day.